Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Pieces of a Woman. So what Piece of a Woman is essentially about is we center on the character of Martha, and she is a mother-to-be. She is about to go into labor. Everything seems to be going great. Midwife is there, and, she's about to have the baby, but then a tragedy strikes, and basically because of it, we basically then jump to a year later and we see the toll that this is really having on Martha as a character, how she's able to, how this trauma affects her, but also how she's able to overcome this trauma overall. So, Piece of a Woman, I was very excited to see this film. Coming out of, TIFF and things like that, I heard, raving reviews about it. It's one of those films that people have been hyping up for a long time, and I was just really hoping it delivered as much as everyone said. I've heard so many great things about it. It's one of the few films remaining in terms of Oscar season, because, this is a weird year where we still have Oscar films coming out in January and February, and this happens to be one of them, and I was just really excited to see how this film would turn out, and overall, I really love this film a lot. Pieces of a Woman is definitely not the easiest film to watch, but it is an incredibly effective and very hard-hitting drama that I think is definitely going to affect a lot of people in many ways, and we're definitely into right now, and we're just getting into right now, starting off with the cast. And easily, I think that really is the thing that elevates this film, because this is a premise that we have seen done before, but the performances in this film is what is the glue that really holds it together, especially when it comes to Vanessa Kirby, who this film is absolutely nothing without. I mean, she gives such a star-making performance here. And look, I've loved what I've seen of Kirby in other films, whether it be Mission Impossible Fallout or Hobbs and Shaw. I've seen a couple episodes of The Crown. She's pretty good in that. But I don't think she's ever really gotten to get this, I don't really think she's ever gotten that film to really showcase her talents better than this one, and she does such a phenomenal job with it. And I think what really works about her performance is that it's not so much that Kirby portrays a woman who is, going through this trauma really well. It's that she portrays it in a very visceral manner. There's a clear physical transformation that this has on her as a character, and every single emotion just feels so real. It feels so authentic in that way. You really do feel what this is doing to Martha as a character. She really transforms into it quite well, and I think she really does sell that transformation, and you can tell that she's just a woman that is waiting to explode. There's a lot of emotions that she's bottled up inside of her, and it's kind of hardened her in that way with what she's gone through, and I think Kirby did such an amazing job. There are multiple scenes in this movie that I think are definitely Oscar-worthy. I think she absolutely should get a nomination when that time does come around, which still isn't for a little while. It's not till April, but still, I think she's absolutely going to end up sliding in there. I think this is definitely the performance of her career, and just everything she did in this film, I thought she was absolutely spectacular, and she just really held this entire film together very nicely. I think that this is one of those roles that a lesser actor would have done in a very straightforward way, but Kirby did it in a way that just, it felt so emotional that you almost felt like she was a real person. She really transforms into this character in such an amazing way, and it's definitely one of the best performances that I have seen this Oscar season for sure. I absolutely loved everything that she ended up doing here. The rest of the cast also, I think, does a very good job. Ellen Bernstein, a lot of people have been talking about her, and she is fantastic in this film. She plays Martha's mother, who, let's just say she has some beef with Martha. They have kind of a contentious relationship, and you really do get to see that play out to the fullest extent here, and I think she does a really good job with that. Molly Parker is not in this film a lot, but she does play the midwife, and she does a really good job at doing so. I was very impressed by her role in this film. Again, it's a smaller role, but she really takes all the time she can to make it something special. Sarah Snook, I thought, was really good here. Benny Safdie, really the entire cast, everyone's good. And then there's Shia Labeouf, and I will say right now, Shia Labeouf is one of my few flaws when it comes to this movie, and it has nothing to do with all of the, recent information that we've discovered about him, which is absolutely disgusting. Like, everything we found out about him is horrible, but taking that out of the equation, I just don't think this is that great of a performance. I mean, I think the best way to put it is that you look at every other actor in this movie, and Vanessa Kirby, who really transforms into Martha. Ellen Bernstein really does a great job transforming into the character of Elizabeth. Even Molly Parker, it doesn't feel like this is Molly Parker. It feels like it's this midwife who is very worried about, what's happening. She doesn't know what to do in this situation, and you can tell that she is experienced, but she hasn't experienced this kind of thing before, and I think she transforms that very well. Shia LaBeouf is really just playing Shia LaBeouf. It doesn't really feel like he brings anything that special to Sean as a character. There are moments where I think he sells the emotion very well. You can tell that this has had a clear impact on him, and it feels real. And then there are moments where it feels like he's really either underselling it or overselling it. So I went very back and forth with him. I just didn't think he was as well cast as I thought he was going to be, which is shocking to me because I thought LaBeouf was coming off a career resurgence with Peanut Butter Falcon and Honey Boy last year, but here it didn't feel like he fit this role right. It didn't feel like this was the role for him. It didn't really feel like he fit it. It didn't really feel like he fully understood it, and it just didn't really end up working for me. So, again, I think that he's not terrible in the movie or anything, but he definitely, looking at all the performances, he is absolutely the weakest link here, and I do think he does slightly bring this film down just a bit. But aside from him, I think this is a very talented ensemble, and I think they anchor this film very nicely. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because that's one of the things that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, and I wish they would, because I think Kornél Mundruczó's directing here, the way that he directs this movie is really well done. I mean, he does a really good job at making this feel like a very real situation. This is something that I'm sure a lot of people have gone through something like this before, and he really pulls no punches. He takes every opportunity he can to make this feel as real as possible, and I really love the way that he went about that. The film, like I said, it can be very hard to watch at points, but I appreciate that. I appreciate that he wasn't trying to, he wasn't trying to sensationalize this in any way. He was trying to portray it as grim and as tragic as he possibly could, and I really love the way that he went about that here. I thought his directing was very well done when it came to this film, especially when it comes to the way the film is handled in certain aspects. The film definitely does get significantly darker as it goes along, but he does also, I think, a really good job of portraying the hope that is instilled with these characters. He doesn't try to make it just doom and gloom the whole time. He tries to add a sense of hope there, and I think his directing overall was just very consistent and one of the best elements of this film for sure. The writing as well, I definitely found myself very impressed by, because like I said, I think this is a situation that a lot of people have gone through, and they're going to relate to Martha as a character very well, but also what this does to Martha. I mean, we really do feel for her in this situation, not just because of the situation itself, but also because who she is as a person. When this all goes down, it kind of gets her to realize some things about herself that maybe she put on the back burner before, maybe it was just in the back of her mind, but now is a much bigger concern. And you really see how through this tragedy, it really starts to change her sense of self. It really starts to take her in a different direction, whether that be positive or negative. And I think the way that Weber portrayed that here was really well done. I really enjoyed the story a lot here. But I can also see why people would be bored with a good majority of this movie, because the first 30 minutes are fucking amazing. It is this one take sort of shot, and I don't think the whole thing is actually one take, but it's like a fake one take in the sense where they make you think the whole thing is done in one take, and it is so riveting and something that is really it's something that was so investing in that way and really has you on the edge of your seat throughout. You don't know what's actually going to happen. You're kind of worried of like what's going to occur, but you're just kind of waiting for it to occur, and the way that they handle it is just, it's done so masterfully. It's so raw. It feels so real. It almost feels kind of documentary-esque in the way that they go about it. Nothing about it feels like a movie, and it just is something that feels so personal. And once once the thing that happens, it happens so quickly that you're just so taken aback by it in the best way. And so, because of how good those first 30 minutes are, the rest of the film does have a lot to live up to. And for me personally, I do think the rest of the film is still really good because it's basically the aftermath of that. We get to see how these characters process this situation, what it does to them, how it puts a strain on some of their key relationships within their life, and specifically for Martha, how it alters her as a character. But I can understand if it does get repetitive for some people, because again, it's very different from those first 30 minutes, which again are almost done in a one take where it's completely uninterrupted in that way, and the rest of the movie is not really like that. But for me, I thought those first 30 minutes were so good that that is what kept me invested in the characters. And Martha as a character is very well handled because again, you understand every single emotion that she's going through. Not just the fact that clearly, what ended up happening to her had a huge impact. It's also the fact of certain choices she made leading up to that maybe she naively thought was a good idea and now is kind of realizing, oh no, that was a horrible idea. And, what that really does to her as a character, especially when people are calling her out on it, and you can already see that she's very high-strung in that way. Again, I think all of that is very interesting, and I think the film definitely does do a very good job with that. And the film also does a really good job at showing the relationship between Martha and Sean, and one that seems very sweet, and it starts out the film, you think this is a very supportive couple. He seems to be doing everything he can to help her with this baby and things like that. But then once things take a toll, you really start to see that this isn't a very healthy relationship. They are frequently disagreeing a lot about things. They especially feel differently about how they should handle this specific situation, and you really do see how that starts to take a toll on their marriage and how their marriage starts to crumble as a result. And it's very sad to watch, but it also feels kind of inevitable given what we're told throughout the movie, and I think the film did a really good job with that. Her relation with her mother, like I said, it's one of the main components of this movie. Her mother is very critical about a lot of aspects of her life, and you can tell that Martha just kind of like pass it off and just be like, oh, that's just my mother going on about nothing, but now she's kind of starting to realize that maybe she was in the right about some things. Maybe her mother was correct about some things there. And I thought that the way they handled that relationship was really well done. It felt very important. It felt like something that really had an impact on Martha, and definitely one of the most effective aspects, I think, of the entire film. And I think even people that haven't had this experience before, where like, they are a couple that is expecting a child, or they themselves were carrying a child, I think even they are going to be affected by this, because you understand that the loss of a child, it's not just something that is like any other loss. It's a loss that consumes everyone. It consumes you with emotion and trauma, but it also consumes you with a lot of blame. You're placing a lot of blame on yourself, wondering what you really could have done in that situation, and you feel like Martha is kind of in that same boat, especially with what ends up going down. It's not really something where anyone is at fault. It's just the way things play out. It ends up in such a devastating manner, and you feel like Martha is kind of like recalling back to that constantly in the film, and I think they handled that very well here overall. And again, I think this could have been portrayed in a way where they really place blame towards like the midwife or something like that, but the film really does a good job of taking a very realistic approach to the whole thing, and it just made the whole situation feel that much more tragic in that way with the way things really did go down. There's one scene especially where she's at a party and just all of these emotions start to come out. It almost feels like these feelings that she's had that she just hasn't really expressed before and finally is, and it just was such an effective moment because we totally understood why Martha hasn't said it until now, why now she's finally like exploding in that way. Because like I said, for a lot of this film, while she is affected by what's going on, she seems very cold-hearted. She's very passive in that way. And, you know, finally in this one scene, it all just kind of comes out, and it really feels earned in that way. And obviously, yes, Vanessa Kirby's performance is a big reason for that, but also just the way they go about this character, I think they did a very good job in really making you care about this moment, and I thought it really did work overall. So I personally found myself very invested with the screenplay. I really loved where they ended up going with it. I think there's some motifs as well in the film that are really well handled. One at the end especially that I thought was so beautiful, the way they went about it. It was such a poetic way to end the movie, and I really loved what they ended up doing there. The film clearly has a lot to say about what it means to be a mother, but then what can happen if that is taken away from you and how you have to, you know, sort of rebuild your entire life in that way. And I think that was really well handled for sure, and I definitely really did enjoy that. The part of the film that I think is definitely the thing that brings it down for me a little bit is that I just think there's a little too much going on, a lot of which just doesn't get resolved. And what I mean by that is that there are some key subplots in the movie that at the time seem very important, but when they happen, they're not really discussed again. Specifically, the character of Sean, who I already said that Shia Labeouf is very hit or miss for me in the movie, but the character of Sean as well, I think is honestly pretty underwritten. You know, there are moments where it seems like he is naturally affected by this. You understand that he really wanted to be a father. You understand that this had a clear impact on him. You know, he's a very happy-go-lucky guy, and it kind of shifts him into someone that is a lot more, you know, he's a lot more annoyed at things. He's a lot more cynical. He grows very dark in that way, and you know, you can understand that, but then they take him in these weird directions that just don't really make sense, and I just don't think they got the proper time that it really needed to understand the logical shift for his character. Everything else, again, made sense, but for him, it just really didn't work. There's one subplot especially that I just really did not see the point of. It didn't really go much of anywhere. It felt like they still could have done the same thing that they did with his character without having this subplot, but they did because they wanted to include this character, and I just didn't really feel it was necessary. I didn't really feel they needed to do much with that at all, and I think it definitely could have been cut from the movie altogether. So yeah, I do think that does sort of bring the film down just a bit for me, but overall, I think this is a really well done screenplay. I think there's a lot of things that it does do very well, and I think it definitely is one of the high points of the film. Cinematography-wise, I think this film is very well handled in that way. Every shot, again, it has this very crisp feel to it, and it's just very well, it's a very well shot film. I think, especially like I said, those first 30 minutes are just so amazingly handled. I don't really know how they pulled it off in the way that they did, but it's done in a way that is just unlike anything you've seen before, and I think the rest of the film is also very well handled in that way, and I enjoyed the cinematography a lot. Howard Shore's score to the movie, I think, is also really well done. Definitely one that, you know, I think added to the emotional heft of the movie. I do think at points it's a little overbearing, but for the most part, I really enjoyed the score in this film, and the editing. I think this film is very well edited. edited. I think for the most, you know, in terms of it being 2 hours, it never really dragged for me. I was pretty invested in this film for pretty much the whole time. I found it to be a very effective watch for sure. And the ending of this movie, like I said, I think it's really well done. I heard some people say that it was a little bit too cheesy, but I thought that it really did work for the character of Martha. It made sense with what was going on. It made sense in terms from a story perspective, and I thought they handled it as well as they really could have. Guys, Piece of a Woman is a very effective film. It's definitely a movie that I don't think is going to be for everyone. There are some moments that can get a little repetitive. There are some subplots that I don't think really go much of anywhere, but it's anchored so well by such a masterful performance from Vanessa Kirby, who just really understands this character so well. An amazing 30 minutes, opening one-take scene, which I think is going to take everyone's breath away, and a really good understanding of how trauma and grief affects an individual. Piece of a Woman overall I thought was a very effective film for me, and I am going to give it a B+. But over, guys, in my review, Piece of a Woman. Let me know what you guys saw of this movie overall. Look your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.